It's the Conservative Cat Show. Thank you so much for being here and with me in studio. Dean, how are you? He's not a politician. He's not a lobbyist. He's a hardworking taxpayer, McLean County taxpayer, and he's paying attention. It's the Conservative Cat Show. Thank you so much for being here and with me in studio. Dean, how are you, Dean? How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Kat. It's how have you been since we talked a couple months ago?
Pretty good. Pretty good. We talked a couple months ago about the sales tax referendum. Unfortunately, it passed. And, folks, Dean, he's not a politician. He's not a lobbyist. He's a hard-working taxpayer, McLean County taxpayer, and he's paying attention. And he paid really close attention to the sales tax referendum. Really quick, summarize for our listeners, viewers, what that sales tax referendum was all about.
Yeah, so basically the schools wanted to increase the sales tax in McLean County from 8.75% to 9.75% on most goods and services you purchase, like gasoline, pretty much everything but cars and medicine and groceries, I think. So that did pass by, I think it was like a 53% yes to 47% no countywide. That goes into effect on July 1st, I believe, which is also when the Illinois state gas tax goes up again. So your gas tax will go up once from the Illinois state legislature. Those are built-in increases that Pritzker passed a couple years ago. And then it's going to go up again on July 1st, thanks to the sales tax. So,
And they're baked in the cake where I think it was in 2019 they voted to double it. And then since 2019, it just keeps increasing and increasing the gas tax. But the sales tax, for the math folks, if you buy a $5 cup of coffee at Starbucks, it's 5 extra cents and it goes directly to the schools. But today we're talking about property taxes, and you're just a citizen who believes in accountability, right, Dean?
Yeah, I'd just like to see our money spent well and to get good results for the amount of taxes that we're paying.
Right.
Which I don't think is the case right now and has been for a long time.
So I wanted to have you on the show today because you had posted something on social media that, made me kind of chuckle and grin. There's this big issue with Olympia School District and Ridgeview. I reached out to the county clerk's office. They did take responsibility for that because that was an apparent error. Up until now, I got that confirmation from the county clerk's office. They did say that, yes, we are the ones who are responsible for the filed levies and the calculating error for these tax rates. So they have taken some steps, and I'll just share with you, Dean, before we get into today's show and just your take on it, what the county clerk shared with me. The county performed extensive due diligence with our software provider and arranged for a correction to be performed this year as allowed by Illinois statute. So they're going to correct it this year. So they're going to send updated property tax bills to you if you're in the Olympia School District and if you're in the Ridgeview School District. The county clerk has re-extended the Olympia and Ridgeview payments, obviously, so you're not going to miss they've extended that deadline to file your property taxes, right, and to turn in your property taxes. The additional tax has been added for the second installment of the affected parcels for this year. Certified letters were mailed by the treasurer to the affected taxpayers on June 4th. Corrected bills will be mailed by the treasurer later next week. So this week sometime the next week. So the week starting June 9th, they should be getting them that week. And then the taxpayers who are in these two school districts have an additional 30 days to pay that second installment without penalty. So it's like a second installment that they're going to have to pay. Mm-hmm. So that is the update, because ultimately they sent out bills that were not as expensive as expected for these taxpayers. And you made a comment, God works in mysterious ways. Can you expand on that comment, why you made that comment? I think it was genius.
Oh, yeah, it's just a blessing from the Lord that they didn't have to potentially didn't have to pay that sales tax the property tax increase as quickly as they otherwise would have. I think some discussion was, they just have to pay the difference on top of their property tax next year, but the school districts whined and bemoaned their the lack of increased income they'd be getting coming, I think in July is when they get that first payment from the county. So the taxpayers are going to pay it anyways, but they got a momentary reprieve, which is a blessing of sorts, and all good things come from the Lord. So
Well, and the God is kind of funny. I think he's a pretty humorous God, and I think that he wanted to make him sweat a little bit. Where, hey, your whole school funding plan hinges on squeezing just a few drops out of these property owners. Really, at the end of the day, because I think it was 1.5 million that they were missing.
yeah.
Olympia, anyway, if they didn't get this, but it sounds like they're going to wind up getting it. But can you talk a little bit about that, where the school, they obviously wanted this 1.5 million. Is there a concern that without it, they were outraged by it. They seemed a little frustrated that they made this calculation error, the county, the miscalculation. So it's kind of nerve-wracking that these schools rely on that so heavily, right? I mean, 1.5 million, it's a lot, but it's also like just a few extra drops. What if the referendum didn't pass? I guess they really, really needed that to pass.
Yeah, so the school boards, like, they pass the budget and the tax levy for like the following year, usually at the same meeting, typically like in the December meeting. So they've already made their hiring decisions and their salary adjustments and all that kind of stuff, and all their contracts based off of what they anticipate getting from the tax levy increase. And I think Olympia actually, they also had a referendum to increase the property tax rate.
Yeah, that was in March of 2024, which was
okay. Yeah, so that was I think a lot of this increase was missing. So that's what this is specifically for. So they probably have already taken out bonds, I assume, as well. So there's some potential debt obligations there. I mean, I can empathize with them from the regard if they planned on this money being there and the voters foolishly approved the rate hikes on themselves. So I can see why their financial officer might be frustrated with that, and they might scramble a little bit. But I actually took a look at some of their district-wide statistics for Olympia, and since 2019, their enrollment has dropped about 7%. Their enrollment's down over 100 students, which is about what Unit 5 is about 6% over the same time period, and District 87 is down 15% over the same time period. But their expenditures since 2019 have increased, I think it was 42%. So they have 6% less students, and they are spending 42% money, 42% more of your taxpayer dollars annually. It increased from like 24 million to, I want to say it was 34 million. And that was through the end of 2024. I don't know off the top of my head their 2025 school year budget. So they already have a massive increase in spending. That's even before they get this sales tax money. That's even before they get this higher revenue from the increased sales tax, increased property tax rates that they passed last year, and also from like the extra bond revenue for their building projects. So they're just spending out the wazoo, and they're spending all this more money for less and less students. So it seems a little foolish, and just bad planning and bad organizational management. If the amount of services you're providing is going down, but your costs are ever increasing.
Yeah, well, I don't know, this error, right? It was McLean County Clerk's Office had done this miscalculation. I say let it stand and let them sweat a little bit, right? Because then they'd have to live within their means, right? You and I have to do it. And I get it. I can sympathize as well with the financial, the people who are working there at Olympia. They were planning on this money being there, wasn't there. But they should be really in a financial situation to plan for this kind of thing to happen. I mean, it's really a hinge. Like, we're dealing with little tiny miscalculations here. If they don't get that referendum money that they passed in 2024, then the whole thing is just going to implode. Like that's what I was taking from these school districts. It's like, man, I really wish that our schools were in a financially sound place and maybe cut some of the administrative bloat to where the whole plan isn't just hinging on this 1.5 or whatever it is on these referendums that it seemed to bring like multiple times a year. Just recently we talked about the sales tax. Prior to that it was the yes for Unit 5. It seems like every year there's a referendum, and it seems like they're kind of flying by the seam of their pants here, banking on these referendums and then banking on nothing to go wrong with the county clerk's office and calculating and making sure that they get that money. It seems like, I don't know. It's like they don't have any kind of emergency funds, nothing.
Yeah. So I actually I just asked Grok to do a deep search for me. And Grok says that at the end of last school year, they had an ending fund balance of $10 million. So I don't know if that is the equivalent of what their like rainy day fund is in their checking accounts.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like they did have, at least a year ago, a significant amount of
Rainy
operating money. Yeah. And then they would get, I think they get I don't know all the timing of the payments they get from the county from the property tax, but I assume they get it in two things since all the property tax payers have to do that, make those twice payments in June and then in September, early September. So they probably had a large rainy day fund of an ending balance of at least a couple $1,000,000 that probably could have covered this. And also they start getting the sales tax revenue. I think they're projecting to get it in like October. So they were already getting more money in that they didn't know if they were going to get it or not, right? Because April 1st, that's when it got approved. And when they made the budget last year, they didn't make it with the sales tax taken into account because they had no idea if it was going to pass. So they were getting extra money. And I think if it is true that there is a legal ability, the state law allows for the county to reissue those property tax bills. That's probably why they pushed so hard. I'm sure there were some lawyers talking back and forth. I'm sure the pristine Olympia High School social studies teacher and Bloomington City Council member Cody, his last name escapes me. I can't think of it now.
Hendricks, yeah.
Yeah, Hendricks. Yeah, there we go. I'm sure he called in some favors as well, put some pressure on there since he's a teacher in that school district to get that revision made. You never know, but
it's possible. Yeah, and I don't know the PR. Because people are going to be getting higher property tax bills than the previous one because this is their second installment. They're going to say, whoa, it's higher. And that's not what I was expecting. And I don't know. Somebody's going to be looking for someone to blame. And it seems like it's all fallen on the McLean County Clerk's office. Yes, there is a miscalculation there. But like you said, they had this rainy day fund, it seems. I don't know. I didn't grok that, but it seems like they might have had this and the sales tax referendum, which was money that they weren't really banking on having. And now they have it because they could get it as soon as October because Olympia's in that that was for McLean County schools district wide, or like for all McLean County schools in the county. So Olympia's in there. And I mean, it's like, why not use that? Why not use what you had left over, the 10 million instead of like griping about this 1.5. It just seems like pinching pennies, and it's either really nerve-wracking or really greedy. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, whoa, they're really pushing for this, and like they need it. That's what they're claiming and expressing, the school officials. And it's like, do you though? And if you don't, I mean, is this just utter greed then? And feel entitled to it?
Yeah, I was actually just looking up also. So I know that the new Illinois state budget, it increased educational spending for their like equity-based equalizer, evidence-based funding formula. It increased at $307 million above what it was allocated last year, and the schools across the state were expecting $350 million. So they're probably a little panicked because they're getting maybe slightly less money from the state of Illinois. And then Olympia gets, in fiscal year 2023, they got $3 million from the federal government. So potentially they're worried about reductions in grants and spending from the Department of Education. Maybe Olympia's got some crazy racist DEI program that they're worried that Linda McMahon's going to find and threaten to pull their federal funding. So I think there's also some revenue worries they have, not just from the local property taxes, but also from the state and the federal level as well, which is probably why they pushed so hard to get this revised tax bill sent out this year.
Well, there you have it. Well, Dean, that was pretty much all I wanted. Anything else you'd like to add? I mean, why, why are you concerned about these issues with the schools and the taxation? And why should our listeners and readers and viewers be concerned?
It's always more money. And it's more and more money they're taking out of your pocket, whether it's at the county property tax level, whether it's at a sales tax level, whether it's at the state level, whether it's at the federal level. We're all paying those taxes to multiple levels of government. And from the property taxes, 2/3 of that is going to the schools, and they are educating less students. They have lower test scores, and they keep on asking for more money. And they're going to keep on asking for more money and doing these proposals and these referendums because so far no one's actually put their foot down and said no. And the voters seem fine with getting worse results for fewer students at a drastically increased cost. So
I don't know if I want to get into this, but we'll try, and I'll see what you think. So, why do you think voters? And I've said this before on the program. I think some voters might feel guilty that they're sending their kids to public school, and because they're gone for 8 hours a day, and it's not for free, but I feel like in the average voter's mind, you're like, public education is not something I pay tuition for out of pocket, thousands of dollars in a tuition. Um, so I feel obligated or almost a guilt to provide as much or to say yes every single time the schools ask. And the schools are in a position where they can ask, and it's like, do you tell them no because they've got your kids for 8 hours a day, right? And they're in a position where they know they can keep asking, and they're at a higher leverage point, or they're in the at the negotiating table in a better place because they're with your kids for 8 hours a day. And are you willing to pull them out? And I don't know if you want to go there, but I was just wondering, why are the voters never like Unit 5? Yes, for Unit 5, that was a couple of years ago. The sales tax referendum got through. Obviously, the 2024 Olympia referendum got through. A lot of these referendums are constantly approved. Now, I do want to do full disclosure. There was a time where the Yes for Unit 5 tax, they tried to put that during a general election, not a consolidated election.
Mm-hmm.
And the voters did vote that down in the general. Now, they do try to introduce these referendums. So March 2024, that's Olympia's. The sales tax, they got smart with the Unit 5 one, and they introduced that one during the consolidated elections. So a lot of people are asleep at the wheel during that time. You just came off, a general election, and most people, the voter turnout for those are traditionally lower. So there was one vote with the Unit 5 one where the voters did shut it down before they brought it back and brought it to referendum in the municipal election of 2025.
Yeah.
Or of 2020, I forget the year. I think it was 2024. The Yes for Unit 5. No, 2023, something like that.
22 was the general election where it lost like a 2-1 margin, and then it won barely in April of 23.
Okay.
So
why do you think voters are saying yes to some of these referendums? Or I would say more so than not, right?
Well, it's a minority of voters in reality, like of the registered voters, right? So in the November election we just had with Trump versus Harris, there was, I think, over 70% voter turnout in McLean County, versus this when the sales tax referendum passed on April 1st of this year, it was, I think, 30%, which is actually pretty high historically for the off election cycle consolidated election. They just don't go out and vote. And I think I saw some statistic from the McLean County Republicans that 15,000 voters who pulled Republican primary ballots a year ago for the general to vote for the primary, to essentially vote for Donald Trump in the primary, they did not vote in this most recent election. So it's just voter turnout, right? And these are like people that pulled Republican ballots. They probably pulled them before the the political parties have all this voter data on if you pulled a ballot, they can't tell who you voted for, but if you pulled a ballot, Republican primary ballot, you're most likely a Republican voter. So there's just a lot of people that are Republicans that have specifically asked for Republican ballots before, and they don't come out and vote in the primaries, and then stuff like this happens when you have voter turnout that's 2 or 3 times lower than the general election. And the thing is, the state, the local elections, that impacts you the most directly. That impacts your quality of life. That impacts the highest dollar amount for most people of their taxes is from the local taxes, between sales tax and the property taxes. That's the vast majority of taxes that the middle class and the lower class are paying in McLean County. So they don't really seem to want to vote with their wallet, or they make that disconnect, or there's something there. But I think a lot of it is you just have to get people motivated to go out and vote. That usually requires a lot of precinct committeemen to help go out and knock on doors and stuff like that. I know the McLean County Republicans, they have like 140 precinct committeeman slots, but only about 20 to 25 of them are actually filled right now. So if you're kind of sick and tired of these sales tax hikes, these property tax hikes, if you don't like that the Bloomington City Council flipped to a 5-member majority for the progressives, if you don't like that the McLean County Board flipped Democrat majority for the first time in history in 2024, go be a precinct committeeman. Go and talk to your neighbors. Talk about local politics too, I think. I think local is where really have to focus to get people to actually come out and vote, and you can reach across the aisle more easily on local elections. So personal advice is don't make everything about Trump. If it's about sales tax for your county, I don't know, maybe don't talk about Trump, and don't wear your Trump 47 hat that you got from the Charlie Kirk rally at ISU campus. So
Exactly.
That's practical good advice. I mean, you can like Trump, but you don't have to talk about him. And so just kind of reach your neighbors where they're at, because the reality is Trump lost in McLean County. For the average McLean County voter, with 70% of the voters out there, he isn't the winning ticket item, and that's just a political reality. So for those local elections, maybe keep it local, I think, is probably the best approach and recommendation I would have.
Yeah. Yep. You can't argue there. And then I'm saying local elections are so important, and you're so right with this low voter turnout, and they've caught on. Your elected officials have caught on that, hey, let's put things on referendum and get things passed via the municipal election, because there's less voters. Mm-hmm. And that we need to address that, I think, as a community, really, and get out the vote. So that brings us to the end of our time. Dean, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yep. Thanks, Kat. Have a great weekend.
Okay.